Love reptiles? Don't miss this. If you're passionate about reptiles, amphibians, and everything cold-blooded, Reptiles magazine is a must-have. Each issue is packed with expert care tips, stunning photography, and the latest news in the reptile world. Whether you're a seasoned herpetologist or just starting your reptile journey, this magazine has something for you. Subscribe today and stay informed on the best ways to care for your scaly friends. For only $14.99 a year, you can step outside your algorithm and get exposure to things that you wouldn't normally see or learn about. My family reads Reptiles magazine, and you should too. Visit subscribe.reptilesmagazine.com to get started. This is the Expert and the Idiot podcast. If you like the show and you'd like to support us, there's a link to our Patreon in the description below. Some benefits include getting access to new episodes up to a month in advance. There's also links to USARK and USARK Florida. If you're not already a member, please sign up. Enjoy the show. All right. Well, I'm here talking with Scott Borden of New York Herp Revolution, and I'm excited to talk to you, man, because you produced the father of my prized jungle carpet python, and I always like picking the brain of somebody that is very successful at breeding carpet pythons, specifically jungles, because I don't want to mess it up and I don't want to kill my female. And that is something that weighs on me.
It's easy.
All right. Well, walk me through it. I mean, have you ever dealt with egg binding or any issues related to breeding? Because that's my fear.
Not with jungles. No,
Okay.
With IJs I did, but I bred them young, younger than I usually do. They were like 2.5, 3, which is the minimum everyone says to that you can breed females, and it's a lot of people talk about size and length and all this other stuff for when you can breed, and age is the actual thing that matters for sexual maturity. Weight and size matters, don't get me wrong, for healthy breeding, but for sexual maturity, actually age is the key. So yeah, I bred IJs too young, and I lost a female to egg binding. Yeah, and that sucked too, because that was a nice IJ. She came from Nick, and het granite female, and that was a tough loss. That sucked. But with jungles, no, I don't breed them young. I learned my mistake, and I knocking on wood right now. I haven't had any of those issues, although I just jinxed myself probably. But
well, that's kind of reassuring for me. I mean, I'm a little obsessive compulsive. I worry about my snakes a lot. I know that stuff is going to happen, so I'm always kind of waiting for it to happen, and
statistically, the more you breed, the more animals you have, the more likely anything is to happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird that I can come to terms with that, but still fear the outcome, or anticipate. I'm kind of anticipating the outcome. I actually, one of my jungles had a slight RI, got some mucus and some stomatitis. Did I say that right? Is that how you say that?
Good enough for me. Yeah, I'm terrible.
I always read
how to
it.
Say certain things. That's how I say it.
So I think what was happening was he was in a quarantine tub and he was pushing. And so he got this little infection right here on his gum, and a couple scales got pushed and scabbed. And, so then I sent off saliva samples, or I brought saliva samples directly to Dr. Tillis, and he ran nidovirus test on 3 of my animals, and I just got the results yesterday. They're all negative.
Yeah,
so
it's good.
I'm like, Yeah, avoided that, like that was a fear of mine.
Yeah, I know Nido's the big bad wolf, but you gotta be careful too. There's 100 other things that could go wrong. And it's funny. I mentioned not jinxing myself. I jinxed myself a few years ago, saying I never had a jungle get an RI really, and then I had breeding related issues that had no. I'm sorry. Yes, I had the first one get an RI due to breeding season stress, and then yeah, I got cocky and I had some issues with a couple animals over different things. I had one that got just one piece of bedding inside his throat when he ate something, and it just a million times they're gonna swallow it, probably never be a problem. This one time it was like stabbed inside its throat, and he got he got sick. That was Spark. That yeah, Spark. He was like one of the top jungles back then from Mike Curtin. A couple of us had babies from him that were just from Scattershot that were just absolutely stupid, and he was one of them. And yeah, like overnight he got just an extreme RI. Like you couldn't even catch it before it got really bad, and it stemmed from that injury. And it's just that he was too far gone too quickly for me to save him, unfortunately. I did. I medicated him, but medicating him, I was like, you could just tell. But most of the time, if you're careful, like you said, if you do the testing with RIs, you don't want to just treat. Or if you do treat, you got to do it very carefully how you do it. Like I know with Spark, actually, if I remember right, with Spark, uh, we decided to treat him before before getting the results back because he was bad enough that we felt we had to throw something, and it didn't matter. I mean, unfortunately, he was pretty far gone at that point. So, but in a best case scenario, if you get a minor RI starting, get it tested, see what it is, because there's different things that cause the RI, and then there's multiple different antibiotics and medications that they can go through, and if you give them the wrong one, it might do nothing. I had, well, she's no longer with us, but Calypso had an RI that she got from bacteria that grew on plastic, and her water dish was plastic, so that might be where it came from. I'm not sure, um, but what they did was they did a sensitivity test for the medications to see what worked, and had we not done that, if we went like Baytril or Fortaz, those wouldn't have worked. I forget what the medication was now. This is years ago, but yeah, since they did a sensitivity test on the bacteria itself, they were able to match the medication to the actual bacteria to fight it off. So
really, and
yeah.
it worked.
Yeah, it worked. I mean, she ended up passing away a couple years later, but yeah, no, that it she was never exactly the same. I don't know what that bacteria did to her respiratory system exactly, but yeah, no, it definitely worked for a while, but
yeah, that's sad. Which parents were the ones to the male that you sold to Nick, that is the father of my girl? Do you remember?
I think I don't. Well, I didn't sell it to Nick. I sold it to someone else who Nick bought a trio of jungles or off of because he was getting out of the hobby or something. So, yeah, when Nick went to purchase those animals, since one came from me, he called me up and said, "Hey, I got this animal," and wanted the background information on it. So I gave him that, and it was that was long enough ago. It was probably Spark, which was Scattershot Delia from Curtin, and then that was probably Calypso also, which was for those that were around carpets long enough when the Morelia forums were around. They had the banner or the logo animal of that, which was like a 70% yellow jungle, owned by Sean Christian. That was the mother of Calypso. So that animal bred to a zebra that had come from Paul Harris. That was just black and just jet black, or bright yellow, perfect animal.
Wow.
So yeah, that's I believe I'd have to double check, and I can always double check for you. I mean, Nick probably saying it's Nick. He probably,
Yeah, I have the
yeah, it's Nick.
PDF.
Never mind. You have everything I gave him. It's Nick. So yeah, no.
Yeah,
If I had to
yeah.
guess off the top of my head, I'm thinking that was long enough ago because I've read her a couple times, and then I did Suna, which was a different animal, which is was from Jason Balin and Headhunter. But that was probably Calypso if I had to guess.
Yeah, she's such a striking animal. So for you, it's more duration of time, and then also ensuring that body composition follows that.
Yeah, the first thing is let them sexually mature age wise, and then if you did everything right for the few years, then the animal should be a decent body composition. And you tweak it coming into breeding season, making sure they're not. You never want them too fat. Too fat's always bad. And you don't want them too lean because they're going to be their body's going through a lot. So you want a good healthy body composition, and if you're going to do MI, you really want a good healthy body composition because now they're going to lay the eggs, and now they're going to wrap those eggs for anywhere from 55 to 70 days ish. And I try not to feed when they're MI just because I'm nervous that's going to screw something up. But yeah, if you had to, I know Mike Curtin has before, a couple other people do, so like you can, but I try to put them in a position where hopefully they don't need to eat for those 2 more months, hopefully.
Hmm.
And I pay attention. If they're getting skinny, I would. Knock on wood, I've been pretty lucky so far. I've been able to wait it out.
So walk me through sort of preparing them for that. Like what are you doing for the years leading up to being, 4 years old, being ready to breed? How are you food cycling them? Are you temperature cycling them? How are you getting their body composition
So
to be peak?
it's changed over the years a little bit. I used to do more aggressive temperature cycles. Like I used to turn heat off at night sometimes. Like when I first bred Jones, that's what I was doing. Like no heat at night. I would drop the heat 15 minutes every week or something like that. Just crazy stuff. And light cycles, temperature cycles, food cycles. Food cycles has always been natural just because usually you stop feeding them in the winter anyway. So but yeah, I mean, when I get them young, I try not to overfeed them. I don't do a schedule, right? I'm not every 7 days, every 10 days. Sometimes I feed them on day 7, sometimes day 14, sometimes day 35, even babies. Whoop, sorry if you heard that. System.
No, you're good. I
It's
didn't
a
hear
brand new
anything.
laptop, so they're short 4 hours postponed. Oh, it's trying to restart my laptop. That's why, because I had to update. Anyway, but we're good. But yeah, I don't do anything. I just kind of. But I would say if we look at the average of when I feed the snakes, the average distance between feedings is going to be smaller as babies, of course. Maybe on an average 10 days, so every 1 to 2 weeks, and then
Okay.
as they get older, I space that out further. But again, even an adult like Nugget, who bred the clutch of babies I have for the last year, um, I've fed her a few times, like back to back on like 7, 10 days, just to give her a little extra, you know, boost of calories. Even though it's a feeding, um, biologically, what happens to their body is about a 2 week process. Um, but yeah, I still gave her back to back, so I randomize it a bit. But overall, if you look at the average, it's a shorter period of time for babies, more time for adults, especially males. Males like I don't know when I'm in the mood.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't go by when they're hungry because they're pretty much hungry all the time.
They're always hungry. Yeah.
So like yeah, once a month, once it depends on the male. Some of these males are a little chunkier than others, and I'll be a little. It depends on how much what size medium rats I have, I guess. But yeah, so you do that. But then when it comes to breeding time, males I don't really worry much about. Um, as long as they're healthy because their body system isn't going through what a female's will. So you got to pay more attention to the female and make sure that you're feeding her accordingly to keep her body in peak condition, rolling into the breeding season. I don't feed for most of the breeding season. I will do a timed feeding, a lot, not a lot, maybe 50% of the time with a female if I think I want to push an ovulation. If I think the
Mm.
timing's right, which I've gotten pretty good at narrowing that down. Um, yeah, but as far as room now, I should have actually went back to that. I do much less cycling now, temperature wise. I let my room naturally does it. It naturally drops a little bit in the winter. It has a couple windows, so there's natural lighting drops down in the winter. I don't mess with their heat at all. I don't adjust anything. I leave it as it is, and I
Mm.
let the cooling of the room adjust the ambience in the cage to that little bit, and it doesn't need to be much. I think a lot of the secret is to not overheat them. I think a lot of people overheat, getting much hotter basking spots, and this is for jungles. I'm not talking about other things right now or carpets, but um, yeah, for jungles, I don't give anything over 89 degrees for a basking spot, and then
Okay.
it goes down to I can't see the temperature right now, but it's pretty warm in here today. But during the winter, you might see low 70s now.
Okay.
Maybe,
And are you using like overhead heat or like an actual bulb, or are you using like a radiant heat panel?
radiant heat panels in the cages.
Okay.
Yeah, and tubs are like heat tape, but in the adult cages are radiant heat panels. So
Okay. And what about your scrubs and some of your other animals? You have sevus, right?
yeah,
That
I got the old. There's my female Malukan right there.
nice. And do you food cycle everything? Does everything go off food in the winter?
No, no, not every. Well, no, I wouldn't say everything. The Savus, especially the male, he hard goes off. Like when it's that time of year for breeding, it's like he's got that one track mind, and it's like he wants nothing to do with food. Which is funny because the Savus, when they're on, man, they are want to eat everything. And but he especially has a hard switch where like for a period of the year, he's just like he could not care less about food. He's just like get it out of my face. But
Mm.
no, I don't cycle feed everything. A lot of this stuff I will try to feed a little more during the winter too. Even my scrubs, I'm messing around with that because I know Ryan Young talked about a lot of Indonesian species. It'd be being better to feed them heavier during this time of year, like during the breeding season, or what we think is breeding season anyway. But it's a tightrope walk for me because I'm sketched out by them being in food mode if they're paired up.
Yeah, true. That's a good
So
point.
I have done a lot of what I usually do with jungles, where I did food cycle them and cut them off more this time of or well, you're coming out of it now, but over winter I would feed less. Because with them, the nice thing was once you stop feeding them, there's a certain point where they do real well, where like that trigger kind of shuts off, and they're like, all right. And pairing them was much easier. Um, I just had them
Mm.
paired actually a couple weeks ago, and it was a little sketchier because she was definitely on when he was in the cage, and I'm like, I don't want to walk by the cage and have her strike or something. But it's a it's a tightrope walk, basically.
What what is it that drew you to the jungles?
I mean, look at him.
Yeah, I know.
You know
I
what I'm
know.
saying?
I have
Uh,
5, so I get it.
yeah, like look at him. But yeah, no, it was years ago that my third snake was IJ, Irian giant carpet. Yeah, I said Irian giant. I can do that. I'm an old dog. I still don't. I can't change the name, but Papuan carpet for the new cats, I guess. And that was my third snake. And then I got a white lip after that. And then one night I was on fauna classifieds, which I don't even know is really still being used, but there was a kid who was going back overseas for the military, I think it was, and he was selling his snakes, and he had a pair of jungles that were purchased straight from the Barkers, old VPI line.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I remember I walked into the pet store that I used to hang out at when I was a kid at that point, and I was like, dude, there's these jungles, blah, blah, blah. He's like, well, if you don't go buy them, I'm going to. And that I went home and emailed the kid, and I purchased them, and I got a pair of original Barker animals. And yeah, from there I've never not had jungles in the collection, and that was, whew, that had to be about 2003, something like that.
Damn. 22 years ago?
Yeah, something about that, because I started in 98 keeping, and my third cut, by the time I got my third and fourth snake, it was a couple of years, a little bit, because it was slow, because I lived at home, I couldn't even drive, you know what I mean? I was young, and I got a ball python, a boa, very cliche.
Yeah.
And then like I said, the third snake was an IJ, and then the northern white lip python, which was a stupid idea at that point. Stupid idea. I agree with Nick Mutton's opinion on white lips. Like, we both hate them. We still have them, but we hate them because they can be vile when they're vile.
How so?
Oh, when they want to be, they're gonna just chainsaw you apart. Like, when they're bad, when they're aggressive, they're mean and nasty, man. They're not fun, and they're fast too. Like, they're not like a python that's gonna sit there and hold on to a hook while it's striking at you. They're running, they're striking.
Jeez.
They're just not fun. They have the fastest strike of any python.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, it just sucks. But I have two now. One is not nice, and then the other is actually perfectly tame. So I do have one tame one, but yeah. No,
is that from you putting in time with it, or are they just individuals?
Nope. That tame one was a friend of mine who has since passed away. He had it, and I had gone over to his house to see his collection one time, and I was like, dude, this thing's awesome. It was in shed, it was calm and tame. I'm like, this makes no sense to me. And then I saw him at a local reptile show maybe 2-3 years. I mean, I had seen him since then, but we ran into each other at the local reptile show here, and he's like, hey, do you want to buy it? And I was like, well, that's a stupid question. Like, yeah, I've been begging you to buy this thing for 3 years now, so yes, I'll take that animal. And now I still have that animal, which means more now because he passed away, I guess. But no, the first one I got was just a dumb idea because, like I said, I had a ball python, a boa, and a IJ at the time. I was like, I want something different. So I went to the pet store. They pulled a list out, the old list that we used to see, and there's white lip python on it. I go home, I look at pictures online. I'm like, that's beautiful. Like, I want that. Problem is, I didn't know how any of this worked at the time, so I just figured everything's a baby. No. This thing came in as a wild caught 5-foot female, and wow. she was the worst white lip I've ever seen in my life, and which anybody that was around her said she was one of the worst too. She just slammed the glass. Like, if she was here in this, she would just be sitting here slamming the glass at you because she just hates humans.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she was a wild animal, right?
She was a wild caught. Yeah, definitely. She only ate birds, which took months to figure out because, again, back then I did not have the skill set I have now to figure these things out, and couldn't get it to eat. Brought it back to the pet store to my buddy. I was like, dude, I can't figure this out. And he calls me one day after they tried hamsters, they tried everything they had there. And he called me one day. He says, hey, you're not going to believe this. You're probably not going to like this. But I walked into the bird room and I had a moment, and we tried to give it a finch, and it did not even hit the ground. Like, it grabbed it. So like, the snake eats birds. I actually switched it over to rodents before I got rid of it.
Wow.
And then years later I got stupid, and I'm so mad at myself when I think about it. I bred those VPI animals years and years ago. And that was my first time breeding, first jungles. And dude, I sold them all. I didn't know about holdbacks, didn't care. I sold them all. I sold them for prices that would make people throw up right now. Like, I wholesaled some to my buddy for like 30, 40, $50 a piece.
Oh my gosh.
$1,000 animal now, probably. You know what I mean? But I got one of those animals back from somebody. I somehow got my hands on it, And again, here's another moment. I wish I kept that, and I didn't. I traded it to Owen McIntyre and Chris Foley, who were partners at the time, for a white lip, which is sitting right back here. Actually, no, I'm sorry. That I think actually that this is the one I won. Or I won in an auction for Ben Siegel. I think the one I traded that jungle for with those guys. I think I sold. I had two at that point, two nasty ones, and I got rid of the nastier one, which might have been the one from them. Probably was. It came from Chris Foley. So, but yeah, I think this one came from Ben Siegel way back when he had auctions before the whole bearded dragon incident and everything else.
Wow.
But and then, like I said, I got the other white lip for my buddy eventually, and I love that snake. That thing's tame, and that's the one I posted pictures of last night.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. That thing is gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous.
it's gotten out in this room once, but
well, it's funny. Right before we were recording, I forgot that I left my Argentine boa's cage open, and all of a sudden, I just saw like the very tip, the nub of her tail sticking out from behind my desk, and I'm like, "Oh shit, I gotta get her."
dude, you haven't had fun until you wake up and hear something that you know is a snake out in the room, and then you realize it's a white lip, and you go, "Oh God, which one is it?" Because that's going to depend on how this goes. We had this in this room. I heard because our bedroom is right next to this room, and just heard stuff getting knocked off the walls. I'm like, fuck. Walk in here, and there's a white lip literally on the. I got like a pegboard thing. I hang my hooks on and some pictures, and there's a white lip just draped up there. And there's that moment you're like, please don't be that one. Please don't be that one. Luckily, that was the tame one, so that was an easy scenario. But
Nice. So you've had snakes since 1998.
yes, yeah.
Damn.
My first ball python I got in '98, which was a bet with my parents to do better in school, try to make the honor roll. They wanted me to do better in school. They offered me money one night, and I'm like, yeah, no, $20, no, thank you. But at the time, my brother had gone to a Cub Scout visit to the pet store, which is oddly enough where I spent much of my youth after that later on. But like a Cub Scout thing, and where they meet the animals and stuff. And I remember this picture of them holding this ball python. So I said, nah, I said, if I got the honor roll, get me a snake. And I barely made the honor roll, I think, but I got the snake, and then they were okay with getting me a boa down the road, a few months later, because now you have one, you're like, oh, I want another one. And then, eventually when you have your own car and your own money, things spiral. And now it's my identity. it's who I am. But.
So what made you go from ball python to boa to IJ? Were you just trying to figure out what you want? Do you still have that ball python? What happened to the ball python and the boa?
That boa, the ball python, no, she passed away. Somewhere between like 15, 18 years old.
Wow.
She passed away. The boa,
was she a wild caught or captive?
Dude, I couldn't tell you. You're talking 25 years, 26 years ago. In a pet store. I mean, she was a normal. So she was a baby when I got her, like a baby. So, but yeah. I couldn't tell you. Back then, I have no idea what anything was. And then the boa, I had two boas. I had one that I got, and something weird happened with it. Its head just never grew. It was feeding, but like something weird happened. Its head was small for its body, and it had some other issue, and it eventually passed away. And then I got another boa after that, to replace it. But boas were never my thing. It just to be fair, I don't remember what happened with that boa. I probably sold it locally, I imagine. But but then I eventually sold that boa. But then I got the IJ, the white lip, jungles, and then from there, things spiraled. I've always been a python guy. I tried one other time, I think, to do a boa, which was a Candoya, Isabel Island ground boa, and I got a wild caught one. She's probably a pretty old animal, and she didn't do very well for me. She did okay, but it was tough getting her to eat, and I ended up selling her. And then, but just boas never did it for me. I was always more of a python person.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. Some people like Ford, some people like Chevy. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
it's
Like,
true.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's probably some boas I would like. I just, and I've had other stuff besides. I mean, I worked with Venomous. You know, not that New York State needs to know that, but I played with Venomous for a while. I mean, I've got monitors, tortoise, geckos over the years. Yeah, I mean, I've had a couple of colubrids over the years. I had corn snakes actually, but there was a snow corn snake that popped in there at some point as a baby. Uh, in the first five snakes, I forgot about that until I'm just thinking about it. But
You got to
they,
have one of everything: a colubrid, a boa,
I guess that's what
python.
I was going for, and then we figured it out eventually, and just stuck with pythons. I mean, and then yeah, like I said, I dabbled in a lot of stuff back then. Didn't want to breed. I just kept a lot of different stuff, tried a lot of different things. Eventually, the staying away from venomous turned into got my first venomous, and then half my collection was venomous within a year. Had
Really
two rooms at my dad's house. My bedroom had animals, and then they had my parents finished the basement and gave one of the rooms to me, and my brother. It was called a playroom, but whatever. We played poker down there and stuff, and I had one of the walls, and I had the second room essentially with animals in it. So yeah, I
nice.
dabbled a lot of stuff back then. But yeah, eventually when I um I eventually got out of the hobby, not all the way, but like 90%. Sold a lot of the stuff. I got overwhelmed, too much stuff. Broke it
Yeah,
down, and I kept those original jungles I had and my original ball python. And then yeah, I don't know. So I eventually there was a day when it popped back up. I got into fish for a little bit, and then the fish didn't. The fish was a lot of work, so I didn't really feel like doing the fish for a while, and I ended up trading the fish for some snake racks and got back into snakes, and here we are.
nice. It's funny. I don't have any ball pythons anymore, but if I were to get another one, I think I would want a normal, just like a normal ball python. They're they look cool, and I kind of like normal animals, kind of what
Yeah.
you would see out in nature. Although I know the jungles that we have are not normal.
Well, that's somewhat bullshit.
Yeah, it
Here's some
is
nice
true.
ones.
Yeah, I've heard people say that you will see black and yellow jungles out in the
Yeah,
wild. It depends on where you're at.
there's this thing that goes around that people try to say, oh, these jungles aren't what you get in the wild, and they're not wrong, but they're not right. Also, like, dude, they're so variable in the wild, and I've seen multiple. Like, you can look at Nick's book. There's some that I'd be like, dude, that's trophy in captivity,
Yeah.
and that's in the woods out there. You know what I'm saying? So, like, no, they're not. They're not as easy or as clean. A lot of these now are very clean, cleaned up some of the muddiness and the dirtiness to them. But like that just comes with 20 years of selective breeding.
Yeah, for sure.
But like it's funny. I just saw you had Derek on and Derek Roddy, and I hung out with him down in Florida when we were there a few years ago, I think.
Yeah.
And he sat me down. He had a pictures on his computer that he had compiled over the years of like wild carpets and stuff and captive ones. So a lot of the wild stuff the Australian guys had shared. And Jesus, dude, what have we fucking done? Because man, you're like, geez, if these were in captivity, like God, these are. It's almost like nature's doing a much better job at selectively breeding than we are in some ways. Uh,
Yeah, that one from the more complete carpet python, the jungle that is like missing its tail.
yeah,
The one I'm talking, it's got like burnt orange in it and just it's incredible looking.
yeah,
Absolutely incredible.
yeah. There's some stuff in the wilds down there that's just even better than what's in captivity in a lot of ways. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, that
So
comes with mutation breeding and crossbreeding to get the mutation breeding to make those mutated animals more, appealing look wise. So the side effect of that is the other stuff that doesn't have those genes doesn't look, in my opinion, as good because they're not selectively breeding to make the wild type better. They're just selectively breeding for the morph. So you kind of lose the better qualities. Unfortunately, that's what happens a lot when people talk about crossing different subspecies or species of carpets. Are like, oh, what will it look like? Well, is a lot of the times the unfortunate truth is it's going to take the lesser desirable traits from both and kind of put them together, and it's just going to look like that generic crossed carpet that's pretty dark and pretty just basic, unfortunately.
Yeah. What how do you how many jungles do you have right now, and then what are you looking for in a holdback?
Oh god, dude, I don't even know anymore.
Well, it's wild because you put up that post of the 9 babies.
Yeah, they're sitting behind you.
They all look so different. That like each one looks so different. I remember, one of them has like the black is more brown with the yellow tipping coming through, and then the other one is just stark 50-50 black and yellow, and that's all from one clutch. So how do you pick what direction you want to go in?
I don't know, man. I every time I think I know, I change it up or like, yeah, it's tough. This could be a tough clutch for me because I'll be honest, all of the 9 are like, this is just stupid. Every time I go through and clean or feed and I look at all of them, I'm like, how am I supposed to choose out of these? And I don't know yet. I guess the easiest way is if you have like a stripe project, it's easy to pick stripes. And then besides that, I think you either got to choose maybe higher tipping, lower tipping, or hold them back a little more and maybe see what the quality of the black or the yellow is. I mean, the quality of the black is what makes a jungle, really. That's the real secret. But so that's the one thing I've tried to do is to go I like a clean, non-tipped black.
Okay.
Heavy black. But again, then you see jungles, I've had them too. I mean, with nice tipping, and that, how do you choose? I don't know. Sometimes it's just like these, I'll probably just kind of wing it a little bit, kind of one or two that maybe are within what I kind of want to do. I have a striped female, so if I got to look at the striped ones in there and see if I have a male or something I want to keep. I don't really know. I wish I had a better answer for you and could help people out, but I don't fucking know.
Well, I guess it just all depends on the individual, right? And what direction you want to go
100%. I'm just bad with it. I should have more, but every time I think I have a direction, I don't know. The clean black, though. The clean black and the more black is generally the direction I've tried to go. Less tipping.
See, and I love that because that's the opposite of what I want. It's, for me, I want, I really like the dark velvety black, but I kind of prefer when it's more toned down and it's more browns with the yellow coming through and then like a really vivid yellow band.
Yeah. And that's good too. It all depends what you want.
That's what that number 2 is. So I call dibs on that animal.
I couldn't tell you which one that was. Because I just throw up pictures and mix match I took during cleaning. I don't know which one's which in the tub unless I look at the head stamp and like, all right, there it is. But yeah,
that's true.
No, I have. This is one of the hardest clutches. The other clutches I've been like, there's a couple that I'm like, yeah, no, I'm selling those. And then there's usually a couple where I'm like, yeah, it's probably the holdback. This one, 9 babies, don't have a clue yet what I'm doing. And I have people waiting with holding their breath, and I don't have an answer. I don't know.
How long are you going to hold on to them, or do you just not know? You have no idea.
It's not much longer. I'm gonna get it figured out here shortly, and probably sell some. But yeah, I have a couple that need a little work with feeding to get them a little better regular. But yeah, I'm.
Walk me through that. How do you get them better at feeding? Because I have a little female that was feeding good. Well, and then she went off food in the winter, and now I can't get her back.
How old is she?
Less than a year.
Oh, like baby! 6 months. Oh, and she went off food for the winter. Jeez, they don't. What a pain that is. Usually, they don't go off when they're that young. But that's patience and figuring them out.
Yeah, trying different things. I mean, I've got quail, I've got chick down, I've got everything.
Patience is the best thing. If they're not losing body weight, then I wouldn't worry too much. I mean, I would stick to the rats first. Try to keep it rats. If you have to go mouse or something else, just because jungles can be, if jungles get locked on something, it's fucking annoying. Mm-hmm. But if it is what it is, if it's got to eat and they'll eat something, it'll eat. So
I had a male that I actually got from Curtin that he wanted live mice, and I didn't have live mice, and it got to the point where they were getting bigger and bigger, and I'm like, all right, I can't feed you a medium mouse, and I don't want to do that where it's gonna potentially injure the animal. So I ended up giving him a quail, and he took a quail, and then he graduated to chicks. And I'm like, you know what? The chicks are pretty cheap,
Yeah.
so it's not that big of a deal. They're actually cheaper than the mice, or they were when I bought them. And I don't really feed chicks to anything else. And then I moved him. I took him out of his tub and put him into a 2x4x2 or 2x4x2.5. And now he's eating anything I put at him, rats, whatever. He's always hunting. He's always hanging out of his branch.
Yeah.
And just ready to eat, which was the opposite of what I anticipated. I figured that going into the cage, he'd just go off everything. So that was kind of surprising.
Sometimes the change works, and that's what they needed.
Yeah.
There's weird random things like that to happen. I mean, there's an old trick I've used it to try to get. I've used it with carpets, is try to get them to breed. If they're not breeding, is take them for a car ride. Put them in a tote.
Interesting.
I've done it. Yeah, to take them. I don't know what it is, but yeah, you put them in a tote, put them in the car, take them for a car ride, come back. It's just weird little things that like a change that triggers something. But yeah, with feeding, that's patience, and then sometimes it's the change. Like I said, you move it to a cage or move it to a different. It could just be as simple as move it to a different tub.
Yeah. How do you feel about force feeding or assist feeding, I should say?
I've never done it with a carpet, so I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it in a life or death, desperation attempt, but you really got to play with the stress balance with that. That's gonna be a lot of stress on the snake. So if you're doing it, I know a lot of people have done it over the years. I'd rather, and I've had good luck figuring it out before that. Figuring out what they want to eat or what little stupid idiosyncrasy that you got to do to get them to eat. And some of these animals are individuals that want something stupid. I mean, I had a female jungle years ago that like you had to keep giving her the food like 5 times before she would eat. She'd grab it, wrap it, and then leave it. I'd come back in here, give it to her again, grab it like 3 to 5 times of doing that, and then she'd eat. Some it depends on the way you heat the rodent. Sometimes you got to use a hair dryer to heat it and do a dry heat. Sometimes you got to soak them in hot water. That's when sometimes they're just individual little idiosyncrasies that you're going to have to figure out.
And then once they get going, they're good.
Yeah, usually. I mean, that's the case usually. I mean, sometimes that idiosyncrasy becomes a habit for them, and that's what you're going to have to do every feeding, and other times it's not. Depends on the individual.
Yeah, and then you have to ask yourself, do I want this little pain in the ass snake?
Well, I don't have that female anymore that I had to feed 5 times for each one.
Yeah, I just ran into that. I gave one a mouse, and it bit and wrapped it, and then I came back 2 days later, and I'm like, oh man.
Oh yeah,
sitting in there all nasty.
I won't even make it that long. I usually come in here the next night. I usually feed at night, and then I know the ones who are an issue, so I'll check them. But especially with the babies, that happens a lot where I'll feed at night, check in the morning. What happens is I'll re-offer them with tease feeding or something in the morning if they didn't eat it in the night, and then I'll leave it and go to work. And sometimes one gets missed. I had that recently. One got missed for like the second day. I didn't know it was in there, and by the time you come home, you're like, ah. Shit.
Yeah, you smell it before you see it.
Yeah. Or sometimes depends. Sometimes it's not too bad if it's on the front of the tub, but sometimes they'll grab it at the front, bring it to the back by the heat, and leave it there. That's when it's bad. Yeah, that's
even worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, then it's baking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Nastiness. So you what about maternal incubation? You had mentioned that. Why do you gravitate towards MI over artificial?
Sure. Why not? It's beautiful. It takes nothing when you do it right. It takes nothing. The first time you do it, you're going to be nervous as hell. And then it depends what kind of person you are. Are you a control freak, or you really got to be hands-on with it? and got to see the eggs every day and make sure they're 89.5734 degrees, or can you realize that these animals have been doing it for a million years? And not all mothers are created equal. Don't get me wrong. You know, that's just the fact. I mean, I'm lucky that so far, knock on wood, all my moms that I've done it with have been really good at it, very good at it. And, but yeah, it's equally exciting and interesting as it is boring though, because it's set it and forget it. You know, I didn't used to do it, but eventually I was talked into it by Howard Redding and Jason Balin. And, yeah, I tried it with jungles, and now it's my preferred way with jungles. I don't want to take the eggs at all. I don't want to even deal with
Really?
it. Yeah, no, it's much rather just they all get they're a hide box seconds as a nest box. So usually once I see they ovulate, I'll rip up a whole bunch of newspaper and put it in there so they can nest. And then it's just I leave them. The temperature in there is usually within a range that's makes them happy. They'll move them a little bit if they want. I've had some moms move them to something a little warmer, and some move them to a little cooler. But dude, it's the only time I'll miss the carpet. I will say that. It's the only time I'll add humidity, and that's for the eggs. Um, if I get a peek at them and I think maybe they need a little misting, after like especially the second half of the incubation, so the second month, I'll miss the cage on the other side, not where the eggs are, because I don't want to stress anything out over there. So I'll miss the cage over here just to boost the humidity. But yeah, dude, with jungles, it's just I don't know. I feel very comfortable with jungles when it comes to every step of the process, A to Z. So yeah, maternal incubation. The first time I was nervous, but now it's just secondhand where it's like you just kind of leave them, and then usually around day 54, you just pay attention, and eventually one of those days you'll see she'll loosen up, and you'll be like, oh, I can see the eggs now. So, and then usually if you look through the hole of the nest box, you can see a piece of a baby on one of the eggs or something. And then, so once they start pipping, or once a couple heads are out, I'll take her off and I'll put the eggs in a tub in my hatchling rack, and then let them come out of the egg in the hatchling rack. It's much cleaner than coming out in a full cage and becoming a nightmare. Which, knock on wood, I've never had that issue where I haven't caught them in that time period. I don't think. But and
That's
then
so
yeah,
cool.
I did Savus, where it was one of those things where I was like, holy shit, I'm gonna have Savu eggs, and she laid, and it was like, all right, you know what? It was kind of the moment where you had to commit to it because nobody's really done it. Only one other person did end to end maternal with Savus that I could find. Maybe there's more, but I asked around, and everyone that I spoke to and everyone that knew of, a lot of them went partial and then pulled the eggs. I want to say it was Lon Dexler. I'm not sure if it was him or not, but one of those guys that did Savus before me, they did do end to end maternal incubation. So with the Savus, when I did it, I was just like, well, Jesus, take the wheel. We're gonna commit to this, and this is no matter how nervous I get about this, because it's different than jungles. Jungles, I don't get nervous. Like I just try to forget about them for 50 days. Honestly, I check on them. I'm not saying I don't check on them, but like I'm not checking on them daily. Second part of the month, I'll spray in there, and then if she's coming off the eggs a lot, I'll investigate. But the Savus, it was like, well, we're gonna do this. Let's let it ride. And I did things a little differently. I had sphagnum moss in there, much more humidity, but also away from the eggs. I kept the humidity higher than I would worry about with jungles, and yeah, I went the full distance, and she did a fantastic job. Had the babies, fucking terrible babies. I hate them. They're just mean little bastards, dude. They're cool snakes. They're beautiful snakes, but man, when they're young, I forgot because I had both of mine that young, pretty much, and they're just mean little bastards when they're young.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the
So
Savus, it was a little more involved, but
How many eggs were there?
I believe the Savus I had, let's see, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8. I have 8 babies. So I think if I remember right, I had 11 eggs, 11 hatched. 3 failed to survive. So I don't know. I just could not get them eating well. And it was weird. They all died around the same time. They just failed to survive.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know what it was. I think it was just failure to survive. But no, I got the 8 still, and I'm shipping some out here hopefully in the next week or so. Uh, so, but
That's awesome. What have you observed any behaviors from the mother while incubating that kind of piqued your interest and kind of made it worthwhile, or do you just leave her alone and you don't really go in the box,
oh, I
or
don't
do
go
you
in the box, but you'll see if you look in the hole, you'll see with jungles especially. I believe my Savu did it also. It's always interesting to watch them shiver.
Hmm.
So I've seen that with jungles. Jungles definitely shiver or twitch. I don't want to call it a shiver. PC pass is included. Yeah, no.
Setting up your new PC while we podcast.
I'm not even. It's just popping up random things as it tries to set it up. But no, it's like it's not really like a shiver because it doesn't last long. It's usually little twitches and it's quick. And so you see that with jungles for sure. And so I think I saw my female do it a little bit, but not as much with the Savu. But she was also in a big reptile basics hide.
Mm-hmm.
So I basically put all the nesting material on the base of the tub. That I bred them in tubs, CB70 tubs, and so I put all this sphagnum moss and all that on the bottom, and then the reptile basics big hide over that, and she laid under that. So I couldn't observe her really without actually disturbing her. By the
Yeah.
time you pull the tub out, she's already disturbed. So yeah, there wasn't much I could do with that. The jungles I can usually do um, right as they are now. I mean, I can usually see in the hole with a flashlight from where right outside the cage without ever disturbing them, so I can see more settled behavior.
Damn, that's so cool. It's, so often when you ask about MI or trying it out, people are like, maybe when I have like a lower impact clutch, something that's, not that big of a deal that I don't really care about.
Yeah, I went the opposite way with Savus because that was 10 years of growing them up and multiple years of trying and failing. So like,
Wow. Well,
it's like I said,
congratulations on that.
I appreciate it. Yeah, that was one of the funnest moments I've had for sure. Breeding those.
Are those where did those animals come from, or were they captive bred that you got?
Yeah, the female was from Wilbird, and then the male I got a year later from Michael Pinnell.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So
Yeah, he's a great dude.
yeah, Michael's very good. Great breeder.
You should get some dwarf berms from him and do those.
It's a terrible idea. New York State doesn't allow that. So
Really?
yeah, berms they don't count. They don't see dwarf berms as they're not going to see dwarf berms as anything different than regular berm.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that you were in a similar situation as Florida.
Somewhat different, somewhat similar. I mean, I'm fine with New York's list. A lot of people hate New York's list. They're like, all the cool stuff is on it. I'm like, you don't know what the cool stuff is then, because I mean, yes, this stuff's cool, but like, it's the things you expect to be on the list. It's everything big, everything venomous. It's what you would expect to be a restricted list, and then I don't know. Florida's a much bigger mess than New York. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
much bigger mess, but you know, New York's biggest problem for a long time was the permit system they weren't even issuing permits. It was broken. Surprisingly, which I feel like never happens, they did in the last couple of years revamp the permit system. They made set standards for the caging for what you have to have. A lot more like Florida than it was before previously. Insurance, et cetera, et cetera. And actually the annoyance of that sent a lot of the old school educators out of it. because they were just like, it's not worth the aggravation now.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you need to have specific insurance to keep?
I don't know if it's specific, but I think you are supposed to have a certain policy worth X amount of dollars. If I remember, I never read it because I made them once. Especially once I'm a homeowner. I was like, I'm not owning illegal reptiles.
Sure.
And besides, I mean, I was pretty public. I had a pretty public persona for that, this whole time. And besides that, now I actually am licensed to relocate timber rattlesnakes locally, nuisance rattlesnakes. So like DEC, and which is our version of the FWC, pretty much. Uh, in their infinite wisdom, anytime they do any type of licensing like that, they always make sure the fine print says they can enter your home whenever they want to check. So they can enter this home every time they want because I'm licensed for that. So I'm like, it's not worth keeping that shit anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't have the space. I mean, I had some offers for some pretty cool animals that were not legal, but like I don't have the space for that, and I didn't want to make the space for it, So
Yeah. And the risk that goes along with it.
but yeah, so when they revamped the permit system, it was like it changed like all the making it safer, but also making it a little more restrictive. And a lot of the guys who weren't doing educate, because you have to do pretty much, you have to be an educator and actually do at least one presentation somewhere to have that permit. At least you did. So a lot of the guys who weren't doing a lot of education anymore, they weren't doing as much. It just became not financially worth it to put all this work into creating new caging or new entrance to the room or dealing with insurance, yada yada yada. If you're only doing a show here and there and you're not doing it every week, making money on it, it's not financially feasible at that point to hold your license anymore. So some of the guys got out. Some guys still do it.
That's man, I would bend over backwards to be able to get a berm. I'd microchip it. I'd get it on some registry. I'd open my house to the FWC. I'd do anything.
Yeah, a lot of people would. Florida's broken.
It sucks. Yeah, I mean, I wish that there was some way for responsible keepers to be able to keep responsibly. But it's just,
and that's what I said. I said this 10 years ago when they weren't doing the permits. I said I had a lot of arguments online with people that were pretty dumb, but well, because these guys go online and show off their illegal shit, and it's like, you guys realize DEC's on here, like if they want it, you're just giving them all the evidence they need. Like that's how DEC reached out to me to relocate timbers. They saw my online presence,
really
not in the captive trade. They saw me in some of the big local groups, sometimes posting pictures of ones I've seen or trying to educate people. There's like a handful of us around here that try to like fight for the snakes to educate people and not get them killed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a losing battle sometimes, but fighting ignorance is always a losing battle. But yeah, I mean, DEC reached out. She said, "Hey, I saw what you were doing online, educating and posting really nice pictures. Would you like to come?" They were in a situation where they were trying to rebuild their program of relocators. So, and they created this course that you had to go sit through. So, which was funny because when I did it, it was me and two other guys that were within my, not one's a, like a nuisance wildlife guy. The other was a guy similar to me. He liked taking pictures and going to the dens and stuff. And all the rest were either wildlife techs or like law enforcement. So
wow.
One of the DEC cops behind me starts trying to get me to like narc on people. I'm like, yo, bro, come on, man. But there was people back in the day online. They'd post berms, retics, illegal shit they had. And I'm like, you guys are just not the smartest. We don't care. I'm like, yeah, but you're making us look bad. Stop.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I had arguments with people like that and other people about my feelings towards the state, law based on exotics, and like a lot of people hate it, and I get it, but like my point usually is, there's certain states that have the wild west where you can do whatever you want, and those states always make us look bad, and it's usually the animals that pay, and that's where it falls down to for me. It's usually they end up in poor care, right? So like right now, if you go through the hoops to get the Burmese python in New York to do the education, yada yada. If you go through all the hoops, you're probably someone who actually is putting the effort into this, and you're going to keep the animal pretty decent. And, hopefully keep a healthy animal. But like, if it's a Wild West and you're letting 12-year-olds walk out of a show with an alligator,
yeah,
the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
And like that comes back to accountability for all of us, from the promoters to the keepers. And I just freaked out about it for the second time about New York. There was a post that went around. It was a New York show. It's a New York business that we all know. Dying animals at a reptile show. Like, what more does PETA need? What more do they need? And
was that the Uromastyx?
Yep.
Yeah, I saw that.
I know the show was at. I know all the details, and I called this same thing out 6-7 years ago to the promoters and said, "Listen, for your credit, you did a fantastic job. Fantastic job. You brought in tons of variety. You brought a lot of great breeders back then, and you don't need this for variety at your show. Like, but the problem is when you have the person being a big, what's the word I'm looking for? Sponsor,
Yeah,
or maybe a quiet partner. You're going to pretend ignorance." And I told the one promoter the other day, I said, "You can't claim ignorance anymore." And I got the screenshots of it before he deleted the conversation. Don't you worry. But I said, "You can't claim ignorance. I told you 6 years ago, and you can't say you walked around this show for 6 years, and we all know every single show what those cages look like." So, but this is called getting myself in trouble.
Well, I mean, it's you got to think about the welfare of the animals first, and then also the welfare of the animals that are surrounding a potentially sick animal. Now you're bringing pathogens into a public place, and
But this is also why I said that welfare of the animals is paramount, and that's with the laws. I said, look, these 12-year-olds go into some reptile shows and walk out with gators or venomous shit. This is just a bad look, and 9 times out of 10, it's going to be the animal that suffers, right? It's going to be in shitty housing, dirty, underfed, a million things. So the animal's not going to be kept well. Like, that's, and I've watched it. My state's right next to the biggest state that's guilty of this. One of the biggest states. I watched it for years. I was very involved, not with, keeping shit poorly, but like, I was around the black market for a long time, and I see what's going on. Like, that's why my opinions are the way they are. I know how many animals walk out of that show and probably don't survive a couple weeks.
How do you sell your animals? Are you going through Morph Market, or do you know everybody that your animals go to ensure that they're going into the right hands?
It's usually word of mouth. I don't have a Morph Market. I've looked at it. I've considered it because I have a lot to sell. And at some point, sometimes you got to go where some eyes are. But yeah, I mean, I did the free websites back in the day. Did I do King Snake? I did Fauna. Did a lot through Facebook, especially when it was easier to do. But like, a lot of it is people coming to me, or I'll post animals and people will reach out. But yeah, you try to do your best to read the person and hope that they're capable. I mean, I've had one or two over the years that you're like, listen, all due respect, the questions you're asking, like, this might not be a good fit for you. Very few. Usually, if they're that terrified of a young jungle biting them, then that's a problem. A lot of the stuff that I do sell it's a lot easier to keep and a lot more user friendly than, say, a berm, a turtle, anything like that. Like, carpets are pretty beginner friendly, so as long as they're not terrified of getting bit and you're like, this person's going to sell this animal in a week because they're scared of it, I usually can talk to talk them through it if they need it. I used to write a blog, so one of them's on jungle care, so I can send that to them and be like, here it is. It's very user friendly.
Yeah.
You just do your best.
Do you write a lot, or do you still write?
Not as much. I used to write like every week for the blog, and then I stopped for a long time. I just did a blog recently, and that was the first time in 2 years I wrote, and then I did that to kind of I have desires to write a book, so I'm gonna hopefully start working on that soon. And but yeah, the blog was kind of like, let's get the dust off and
Yeah.
try to write again. So
Is that like a creative outlet for you?
I have no idea what it is. I
You just
guess
like it?
it was just something that I felt. You know what it is? When I started it, I felt that it's very hard to get your point of views across sometimes online in a constructive manner when it's a comment that's this much, and it's usually the comment is like the you know, what do they say with the politics, where it's just a like a short clip. That's what everyone's doing everything for. Just that short
Yeah.
main point without any sustenance to it. And I think that that was originally why I started writing, was to be able to write a lot of these ideas I had fully explained in one
Yeah.
place, so people could read the blog instead of me giving you just the one excerpt in a comment and maybe we fight about it. Well, here's everything I think about this whole topic and my thoughts on it, and that's where it started. And I dabbled a little bit. Like I did a white lip care, basically a care guide for white lips, a care guide for jungles. I did an MI, maternal incubation one, because a lot of people don't know about it or haven't are nervous to try it. So I wrote that. Things like that, where I felt it would be beneficial, that would be helpful.
Have you thought about compiling all the blogs into a book?
No, I didn't think. I did have a thought. There's a friend of mine who has done I don't want to say who it is. It's a very well known old school guy, super respected. I almost wanted to do something for him because he does a lot of long writing stuff, and I was going to compile his long writings into something, but I never did put it all together. But
Yeah, that seems like it would be a fantastic idea.
yeah,
Like there's so much knowledge out there, and it's, things like blogs, like people don't really seem to have the patience for them anymore, where everything is kind of short form now,
yeah,
where it's, and a lot of it is comments, right? Like people are going to Facebook groups and saying, my animal has a problem. Here it is. Let's sort this out in the comments. And then it's 43 comments of, probably 40 of them are trash talk. And then there's 3 with good information,
yeah, that happens. Yeah, Facebook's toxic.
Yeah,
They're
for
all their
sure.
hobbies toxic. Facebook toxic. Humans are toxic. Let's be honest. I mean, we're just terrible
Yeah.
animals. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, like I said, I think that was why I started writing, was to kind of get around that a little bit and just give a full explanation of my perspectives on different things. And it did pretty well. Like I said, it's just writing it's work. So like after a while, I kind of stopped. I lost a couple animals that kind of burned me out on the passion for a little bit.
Mm.
So that kind of helped too. But
Yeah, it is interesting that point you made about fully fleshing out an idea, because I recently made a comment, and then I spoke to a friend of mine about the comment I made, and he totally, in my mind, it made perfect sense. And it was like, this explains everything. This is how I feel, in this little paragraph right here. And then, over the phone, he was like, well, I kind of, I don't agree with you on X, Y, and Z. And then I explained what I meant by what I was saying.
yeah,
And then he's like, you know what? That's actually a really good explanation, and then we had common ground, right? And it was a more nuanced subject and perspective. And, but I feel like the comments sometimes they're so brief that it can feel very black and white, and judgmental.
and that's you see it all over the place with all kinds of topics. But yeah, you lose nuance, you lose tone, you lose everything through Facebook comments. And sometimes that's what they want. Sometimes there is no substance behind the person writing these things, right? Sometimes they're just ignorant. But a lot of the time, you lose a lot of that, and that's you see it with. I'll tell you, the hobby is just the same as politics. It's the same exact thing happens. The tribalism, and then it just becomes these toxic discussions that like you're not actually getting the nuance of. And well, honestly, a lot of times the topics have nuance in themselves. Like it's not black and white. It's complicated. It's deep. It's not a simple yes, no, right, wrong. It's nuanced. It's gray. It's not black and white. It's hard to really discuss a lot of these things when it's just comments back and forth, and then you're just trying to respond to what they said and battle them instead of sitting there talking, digesting what they said, understanding what they said, and then replying. So
how yeah, and I mean, similar to politics, it's kind of devastating for the hobby, right? The same way that politics have become devastating for us as a people. It's devastating for the hobby when we're infighting constantly, when it's sort of this divide for these two different directions to go in. And there are bad players for sure. There's definitely people that shouldn't even be allowed to be in the hobby.
Yeah.
But man, that's something that I'm always thinking about, is like trying to bring more people together, no matter how different they are within the hobby.
Yeah. Good luck.
Just to, yeah.
We've all tried it. I wrote about toxicity in the reptile community and thoughts on how to come together. And it's a very large community with very diverse people, diverse perspectives, and diverse moral compasses.
Yeah, it's so true.
So, and then there's the, then there's the other parts of it where it becomes levels of complacency, with like what just happened in New York with that Euromastics, and people, just like politics, we spend a day or two yelling about it, and then we get complacent and we get lazy. Nobody gets held accountable.
Yeah.
That's on the bad players, and but again, that's a very nuanced conversation, depending on the state you're in, depending on the laws you have, depending on multiple things.
Yeah. Have you have you gotten out and done any herping, or have you had any experiences with wildlife in general that have kind of impacted the way that you keep your animals?
Man, I've had so much interactions with different wildlife in the water and outside the water. It's like, yeah, it's I I have learned in a lot of my travels, I have no desire to ever keep iguanas, just because you watch them in the wild, you're like, man, we don't do very well by them very often in captivity. At least the big greens. Some of the smaller ones, people do very well with some of the spiny tails and stuff like that. But especially the big greens, man, you get these young people that buy them, and just they need a room, is what an adult really needs. It needs to be warm. Like when you sit there and you're watching them and you feel the heat, like it's not just the heat under a heat bulb. Like it's you live in Florida, I mean,
yeah,
when it's the warm days on Florida, but you're talking about down by the Caribbean and stuff like that. And it's just that I've had that realization. Yeah, I always want to do better by my animals. I've certainly, I got my black roughneck monitor in a big cage downstairs. I'm glad about that. But yeah, I have a lot of opinions and thoughts on wildlife. I've been very lucky in the last 10 years or so to be around a lot of shit. I'm a big, surprisingly, I'm a big supporter of zoos and stuff and the work they do. But then again, and aquariums, but then I'm very anti keeping, whales and dolphins in captivity. So it just depends on your morals and your experiences, right? Like the more time I spend with those in the wild, the more I'm like, at least it's worth doing them. Like I get the arguments, we're learning more about them. They have a long life expectancy, in captivity and stuff. But man, mentally, it's just fucked. But
have you interacted with whales in the water?
No, not in the water yet. I wish. My number one goal is to swim with orcas in the wild. But no, I've only I mean, depends. Yeah, I haven't interacted with them. I've been close to humpbacks, um, and other whales, but not. I haven't had any good experience with whales. Sharks, yes, tons of sharks. I've been
What's
touching.
that like?
I don't know. It's sometimes scary, sometimes not. It's not. I guess it's not too terrifying, but like you know, you just kind of have to trust everything that you've come to understand about these animals not being what everyone says they are when you're in the water. And then sometimes it's like watching an aquarium when they're in the distance. It's you don't really. It's like you separate your mind. Your mind separates it, and you're just enjoying an aquarium. When they're close to you, it's a little different. It's definitely intimidating. I swam with tiger sharks in the Maldives and had, I mean, face to face, touching distance encounters
Wow.
where uh, you get to see that some of the things that people talk about with body language actually works on these things. When you make eye contact with them and they acknowledge that and don't they check you though. They certainly
Really?
try you, but yeah, I've been by bull sharks down by you down Jupiter. Those are intimidating, and then the oceanic white tips in Egypt were a very intimidating animal. But yeah, it's exciting. It's cool. Scary sometimes, but
I didn't know that they make eye contact.
they definitely do. They definitely like look right at you. Like especially tigers. Tigers are good for that. Like
Jeez.
there's a famous one in the Maldives called Pirate because he's got one eye missing, and yeah, like you learn all these things as you learn about tigers, how they react to humans in the water, and they teach us all this before diving with them. And the one thing they're like, they don't want us to touch them if we don't have to. Like, let them redirect them because we haven't done it before. But you can do a lot, with body language and also swimming towards them. If one's swimming towards you, it seems crazy, but you swim towards it, and it will go to the side. It's they test you, and I had Pirate swim right in front of me, and it was weird because you keep eye contact, and he looked away, and then looked back to see if I was still keeping eye contact. Look, as he's moving and he's kind of curling away, but he kept checking back and seeing, and eventually he went. And then there was a point where we had two tigers kind of separate us from a group, the larger part of the group, and like they communicate by tapping the tank, like the dive masters, so to bring attention. And just tap, 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 and look back, and there's two tigers as we swam back towards where the boat was that had gotten between us and the group and are
Mm.
following us. And dude, it's funny because as soon as all three of us that were separated turned around, it was like, fuck, they caught us. Veered off into the depths, and they're so used to people there. It's a certain vibe at that spot. They're very used to that going on, so they're not really looking at you that way, but they test.
Yeah.
But
I recently saw this drone footage compilation of surfers in California.
with the white sharks,
And dude, the white sharks constantly are coming into contact,
yeah,
and the surfers don't even know it. They swim right up to them, and then they veer off and go in another direction.
yeah, they don't want to mess with them really. It's just certain. Those are also young animals. They're a little smaller. They're not looking at them as food. They're investigating them, like, what are you? And
Yeah.
you know,
So how crazy does it make you? Do you ever like watch documentaries like Finn and stuff like that? And does it just
oh, dude, a lot
ruin
of them.
you?
It's the reality of the world is dark and heartbreaking, and yeah, I think I watched Finn. I'm pretty sure I did. There's Finn. There was the one about the Australian nets, shark nets. Was that Finn or was that?
Finn is the one where they're just straight up it's just it has to be like an hour and a half of just sharks getting butchered
Yeah,
and having their fins cut off and
yeah.
oh
That
man, it's
was.
brutal.
I know which one you're talking about. Yeah, there's that. There's Dolphin Cove. That one, the
Mm,
Cove is a hard watch. Any of that, is the reality of the world is very tough to muster sometimes.
yeah.
Some of the way we treat the natural world and the wildlife, and and it's tough. I mean, your guys' state is wild. They're bulldozing gopher tortoise homes, and I'm like, you got to be a real fucked up human to want to even do that, because I love gopher tortoises personally. I mean, such a cool species to observe in the wild. And
They are. I'm very fortunate at my at the facility I work at. We have berms around the entire facility,
yeah,
and so there's burrows the whole way around because they go to the highest dirt mound and then tunnel into it so the water doesn't go in and they don't hit the water table. So I mean, we've got gophers everywhere, and yeah, they're awesome little animals. And there was a period of time where the state was trying to get them off the list of being protected, because that's one of the things that's holding back. Yeah, it's one of the things that's holding back the developers, because it costs thousands to relocate the animals. And if you have this giant, 20, 30 acre piece of property that you want to slap houses on and do a development, and you have to relocate all those tortoises, forget about it, man. It's brutal. But yeah.
Boy, yeah.
Yeah, Florida is kind of a different ball of wax.
It is and it's not. I mean, it is in the aspect of its very unique, varied ecosystems. It's why do we all go there? It's the most tropical place you can go without going to an island. Going over the ocean. So like, and I did it. Florida is the one place that we've traveled to multiple times but like repeatedly. Other places we try to go somewhere new, but yeah, Florida's the one spot because it's easy. It's a 3-hour plane ride for me. Best friend lives there. Can scuba dive in the morning. In the night, I can go drive the Everglades. So like, it's easy. But me and you talked about it on the phone yesterday a bit, and things going on there, politically, environmentally, conservation. It's hard because, and I know you wanted to touch on it a bit, FWC and them, and I don't want to speak on too much of the hobby side of that, because there's much better advocates for that than me. I have a very broad stroke of my knowledge there. I mean, I know the broad, I know my opinions, I know basics. There's multiple people that have been fighting that fight from the hobby perspective for forever now, and it's, for those folks, it's exhausting, it's tiring, it's just debilitating. FWC is a nightmare for them, and losing your ability to be an educator or keep certain species overnight on some corrupt bullshit.
Yeah,
it's heartbreaking for a lot of people, and these guys have been fighting that shit for a long time. So I really wouldn't want to speak on the hobby and do them disjustice, but they're also the conservation and the habitat destruction side. They're also linked politically. I mean, first off, you have the entire FWC is all literally developers and corporate. So like, and I don't understand how the country does it, or FWC or any other organization has the people in charge are literally the people that you're trying to limit what they can do to still protect things. It's literally putting the fox in charge of the hen house.
Yeah.
Literally. I mean, that's what we've done. It's FWC, Barretto is a fucking developer. And what they do with the EPA and the Federal Fish and Wildlife, they literally continue to put foxes in charge of the hen house that they're supposed to be protecting. And you put a fox in a chicken coop, what are they going to do? They're going to fucking eat them. And that's what happens. And just in a small period of time of traveling to Florida with once or twice a year within a few years span, it was devastating to see the amount of habitat destruction just in that short span. And the reality is that the reason that the hobby has to fight so hard is because they're trying to put the burden on the hobby of what's happening to the native wildlife. They're saying it's the berms and the invasives. Bro, you're destroying their habitat. You're just bulldozing every inch of habitat for these things. So like, if you're losing 95% of your raccoons and your bears and your deer, the berms are having their say, and then the feral cats, which everyone loves. I wish people would stop pointing at. They're having their say, you know. But the real villain here is the habitat destruction. They're
Yeah.
just bulldozing every inch as much as they can.
I don't
Protect.
know how we
Yeah,
can pretend that that's not part of the equation. And that's what everybody does. Everybody acts like cutting canals and destroying scrubland and, turning wetlands into dry areas built up on soil is not having an impact. It doesn't make any sense how you can do that.
yeah. It's yeah, it's very complicated. Again, it's a very complicated and large topic, but yeah, you have to realize, and people see it. You can't drive around Florida and not see it, but like everything matters and everything counts and everything's having an effect. But if we ignore the fact that they're bulldozing all the land anyway, then the rest of it doesn't really matter. I mean, but unfortunately for the hobby, the boogeyman is the Burmese python or the other invasives. So that's
Yeah.
why they're coming so hard after that, and it's a sexy title, right? It's a sexy news title. So
Yeah. 16 or 20 foot, Burmese
yeah,
python. And yeah, all the metrics they put out, they can have a clutch up to this size. And, yeah, it gets likes and followers for sure.
like I said, I've driven through. It's amazing what one road does in the middle of nowhere at periods of time with I would call minimal road traffic, minimal to mid. It's not a highway and it's not a busy night, but just what one road can do as far as damage to wildlife. I mean, just besides ignoring the fact that you bulldozed to put the road there, which is fine. I get it's a national park. Talk about the Everglades. Um, but I've been on that road on nights where it's not big. There is times where it's pretty busy. I don't know if I think you said you hadn't been to the Everglades yet, but you get down to the end of Main Park Road. There's a marina, so there's a lot of times at nice nights where probably guys get out of work, they come down, they fish at night, down in
Yeah.
the bays and stuff. I've been down there some busy times, but I've been there some quiet nights where you don't see a lot of traffic, and even on those nights, you'll see dead snakes from getting hit by cars, dead owls by getting hit from cars, dead ospreys by getting hit by cars.
Yeah.
Uh, and you're talking about a very small span of time and a very small span of amount of cars that even went by. Like I said, I would understand that on a night when there's 50 boats going down the road over 3-4 hours, but we're talking about quiet nights, and it's still happening.
Yeah.
So like the effect we have is just unimaginable, really. And then, like I said, I mean, you got they're bulldozing every inch they can up until the Everglades. They're poisoning the water around there with fertilizers and pesticides and big sugar runoff and everything. And it's sad to see what's happening to Florida. And the reality is that that's just that's basically the outline for what we're seeing at a national level now. And this isn't even political. It's a fact that they put the same type of people in charge as EPA and the Federal Fish and Wildlife. They're putting the same type of people in charge of that, and they always have been in charge of that, and rolling back EPA protections. So these are just facts. This isn't political. This isn't a political opinion. This is just the fact. So, like, if we can't all get on board on clean water and clean air, then we've lost from the beginning and protecting some of our wild places. So, I don't want to see Yellowstone Park or, any of this get clear cut and drilled for minerals. I don't, I don't.
Yeah.
So, and then, it sucks, but yeah,
Yeah.
so basically, yeah, I don't want to speak on the FWC from the pet side, but it is tied in because unfortunately the hobby folk are taking the brunt force for developers and other industries that are really the the problem. Not that the invasives aren't a problem. I mean, it's every little thing that we have down there, every little thing we've done is it all adds up, But at the end of the day, you're destroying every inch of habitat for everything.
The worst thing is seeing gopher tortoise hit by a car, with a cracked shell, and it's absolutely horrible to see that. And everybody, you have to drive, but the traffic has gotten so much worse since like 2020, 2021. It is just, the landscape has completely changed.
And that's where you get into the gray area. I get it. I understand that. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not apathetic or apathetic to that. You have to drive. Like it's these hypocrisies. One of the biggest things that I've seen habitat loss wise has been from the meat industry, which is farms and cows. And like, have I stopped eating meat? No, I haven't.
Yeah.
I'm a hypocrite when it comes to that. I truly believe it's not the cow farts that are the issue. I believe it's the land loss. Again, habitat destruction for farms, and not just the U.S. I've seen it in Costa Rica too, and that's a problem. But again, have I stopped eating meat? No. I mean,
yeah, and then the nitrogen burden that comes along with it too.
Well, that's on the back half of it. Absolutely. I mean, there's all the other aspects of it, and I realized that a while ago. That whole cow fart thing. I'm like, it's I feel like that was someone's propaganda, because I'm like, it's. I'm sure there's probably some sort of level of truth to it, that it's some sort of inhabitor. I mean, if you look at the numbers, like the mass, what humans and cattle make up mass wise per animal, or for everything compared to the rest of the wildlife, it's just mind boggling. But but no, it's that was another piece of the puzzle to me, really transitioning and talking about habitat loss was seeing, as I told you, Herp in Costa Rica. We walk up a dirt road where probably half of it, one side's farm, the other side's untouched jungle. Eventually, you kind of veer away from the farm, and you're both sides are, untouched jungle, except for this dirt road through it. But I bet dollars to donuts that if I went back there today, that both sides of that road would be clear cut, cows.
Yeah.
And there's snakes there, there's jaguars there, there's everything there. And it's the world's getting very small for them. And I get that. The humans are everywhere. But like, you have to protect some of these places. You have to protect companies from poisoning the earth. Like, there has to be some middle ground here. We can't just bulldoze everything. And for the reptile people, that matters for that too. Timbers here and endangered reptiles everywhere are just as vulnerable to all this stuff,
Well, and that's the thing too, right? Like, you can't keep these things in captivity and say that you love them and then turn around and say that you don't want to keep them alive out in the wild.
Yeah.
And especially your native species, which you should be going out of your way even harder to protect.
Absolutely.
What has your experience been like with the state, with the rattlesnakes?
As far as what?
How long have you been doing that and relocating the rattlesnakes? And
I think last year was only so I have the renewal. This would be my second renewal, so this would technically be my third year. I didn't get any relocations last year. The couple calls I went out on, really didn't see much. There was, I went on a couple rat snake calls. Those I should just stop doing those. But I think.
Why do people want rat snakes taken away?
Usually they're in their house or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
gotcha.
Usually I only do that if it's close. If it's in my town or something, I might go over there and deal with it. But but no, last year I didn't have very many calls. The year before I had a couple. But it's pretty cut and dry. You're allowed to move them like what is it, 200 yards, I think, only, because you don't want.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm legally, I think it's 200 yards, 200 feet, 200 yards, I think. But so that's as far as I'm allowed to move them. I have a temporary possession permit, is what I have. So I can relocate them 200 yards into the woods, basically, and but it's pretty cut and dry. I mean, at the end of the year, you basically fill out, you know, documentation of where you did it, however many animals. Say you did 5 snakes in the year, you write each one. You give GPS coordinates for where you caught it, where you released it, and a couple other little things. You send that to DEC with your renewal, and yeah, it's pretty cut and dry. It's very basic. They just wanted experienced people to be able to relocate timbers, you know, without getting bit.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And how do you avoid getting bit? Are you wearing gloves and you have a hook and
snake hooks and tongs, yeah, and
yeah.
you know, a bucket or a snake bag.
Okay.
I don't
And
wear.
what's your protocol if you do have an emergency where you get bit?
Don't get bit. No, if I got bit, I mean, if I got bit, which I hope I wouldn't, but I have to double check. I think there is certain protocols that you'd have with as far as contacting DC, but otherwise, as far as that for here, it's stay as calm as you can. Obviously, you don't want the blood moving, so don't panic. That's always my first thing. Tell people like if you don't have to hike out, you don't want the blood moving. You want to be calm as you can be, so it doesn't spread, and then just get to the hospital as soon as you can, as calmly as you can. You know,
Yeah.
unfortunately, and then they have anti-venom around here because we do have timbers. And then you got the Bronx Zoo, so there's a stockpile of anti-venom at a vet, I believe, in Westchester for a lot of things, but also timbers, I believe. So
You said you have a monitor?
I have two. I have a green tree and a black roughneck downstairs in the basement.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
What size enclosure is he in? How do you keep them?
The green tree's in one that's too small, so we won't talk about that until he gets a new cage. Yeah, but the black roughneck's in a 6 tall, 6 wide, three deep, 3.5 deep. I forget.
Nice.
In the basement, multi-layered. Black roughnecks are they're like they're kind of like the white lips almost of the monitor world. That's probably a bad comparison. They're not psycho, but I meant more in terms of they're very arboreal, phosphoral, and aquatic. They like water, trees, ground. They use every inch. But she's in a big cage down there with multi layers, big plants, a big water
Nice.
trough, and you know keep them like monitors. Very hot in the basking area. Feed decent amount. And the green tree is similar. It's exactly what you expect. Tree stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Cork in big trees and temperature wise the same. The green tree gets only roaches mostly because he's just picky. That's all he fucking eats. Mostly just roaches.
Really?
He'll pick on a little bit here and there, but I feel like it's almost like an accident. Like he just sees this is where my food usually is, so he grabs it and then like I've put bowls in with the green tree of like shrimp, fish, chicken hearts, rodents, all different things, and he's every once in a while he'll surprise me and take something, but like leave the rest, and I'm like, was that a mistake? You know, like
Yeah.
but roaches he'll just pound, and then and the black roughneck will eat whatever I fucking put in there. I mean,
Yeah.
you name it. I've had stillborn snakes; those have gotten cut up in the past and given to her, and
Wow.
everything, literally everything. Old stillborn geckos. I mean, she eats everything. But yeah, that's Reaper. That's my girl.
Do you ever plan on leaving New York, or are you going to be a New Yorker forever?
No, I will not be a New Yorker forever. That's for sure. I'm sure. If I work for the railroad, as I told you the other day, we talked about moving to Florida. That got pushed and changed. I don't know. What's. I'm in New York for a minute. Yeah, I don't know. I won't be a New Yorker forever. If nothing else, if I say I don't think I'd be here this long, but maybe if I stayed till retirement, I'd leave directly after I retired. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't want to be in New York forever, but you know the way the economy is everywhere, and I got a lot of debt to pay off and stuff, so working on that first.
If you were to come to Florida, you'd have to get rid of your scrubs, right?
What scrubs? I believe so. I think I forget what is Moluccans illegal there. They're on the list, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't have Moluccans anymore.
Yeah. That would be a bummer.
If I came, I don't know what I would. I think that's what I had said is if I moved to Florida, it would be, oh, I don't have them anymore.
Yeah.
Like, and just probably shouldn't say
If I
that.
were to, see, and for me, it's, I almost consider going to Texas or something like that, somewhere where I could keep a berm.
Yeah, I mean, Texas was talked about at one point before Florida or during Florida, and like Texas, the way they were going politically, it was something that we weren't interested in either. So
Yeah, they have. I mean, they're like the Wild West in regards to reptiles, which can be a great thing, and it can also be a terrible thing.
as I said, I live next to a state that's the Wild West of the East Coast for that, and it's not a good thing here.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, it is if you want to get whatever you want, but we've had a
yeah,
lot of situations. I mean, alligators especially, in the wrong hands.
yeah. That's crazy. I mean, geez, Louise. Yeah, you'd need an entire room with a water basin and just
Oh
it's
yeah, I had
insane
a
that.
friend doing it. My friend had an alligator in a Nile croc, and
Why?
I don't.
Why a Nile croc? I mean, that's
Why
just
not?
so
It
insane.
was insane. It was a psycho animal. It was cool. It wasn't big. It wasn't full. It was not. Yeah, it was small, um, but
But
yeah,
they
when
don't
they
stay small.
no no, and but when they bought the house, he had started building just these massive. I mean, walled off a portion of the basement. Basically, he made a room or two rooms essentially two rooms next to each other, two enclosures that are basically rooms, and huge water basins and all that. He put a lot into it, and then he made the tough decision to let those animals go. I forget if that had timing to do with them having their daughter or not, but they ended up going down to Florida to I forget where those animals ended up exactly, but uh, some good
Boy,
some good folks.
that's just crazy. I mean, it's like I could see like wanting a crocodilian. I totally get that. But if I were to do that, it would be a spectacled caiman or something like that.
Yeah.
And
No, I'm pretty sure it was a Nile, if I remember right. And it ended up in Florida, but no, he was an educator. He's one of those ones good one of my best friends. It's the one I told you about. Oh, the African rock story comes from him too. Why I hate
oh,
African
okay.
rocks, but
Do you
yeah,
want
no,
to tell that story?
yeah, sure. If people haven't heard that story before, but yeah, no, it was actually the first night I met my buddy Dan and another friend of ours, Brian. Me and him were out at the bar for his birthday, and he's like, "Oh, he's texting Dan," and me and Dan knew each other but hadn't met. And he's like, "Oh, Dan said we could swing by," so we swung by. And going to Dan's house usually entails, I mean, back then, if you didn't know him as much, taking pictures of all his animals. Big snakes, all big snakes, and yeah, no, he had been drinking. They both had been. I hadn't been drinking. I was driving, but they had both been drinking, so that was funny. But my buddy Dan goes, "Hey, we could do Rambo. We could take Rambo out the African rock. He's usually pretty good when I've been drinking." Like, all right, whatever. So,
Speaking from previous experiences,
oh yeah, no, but Rambo
he
was
likes me
a
better when I'm drunk.
Rambo was a 9 foot, I believe 9 foot Af rock at the time, and yeah, so we took him out, and he said, "Listen, we're gonna drape him over your shoulders, do pictures." Um, he said, don't let him get to the ground because then he's gonna kind of feel like you're over him, and he's gonna come back up at you. He's an Afrock, so just kind of let him do his thing. But whatever. He's draped over my shoulders, and I'll never forget. He starts twitching quite a bit, right? And you kind of tell he's trying to hold a little better. He's uncomfortable. He's like, my buddy Dan's pictures, pictures, pictures. He's one of these guys takes 100 pictures to hopefully capture two that are good, right? He's good. He's good. He's fine. And he kind of throws his tail over here, right? And I allow it to happen because he's like, it was one of those things where he was trying to hold on. So I let him do it. I shouldn't have let him do it so easily. And then all of a sudden, like before I know it, he just cinches on my neck.
Mm.
So I'm holding here and I'm trying to give myself a little bit. And I've held anacondas, burms, retics. They're strong animals, and sometimes even just holding you, it's a lot on your neck. So like sometimes you're kind of just, even if they're just draped, they're not even all the way around. You just kind of hold them a little bit apart so you're not getting squished. And so I'm kind of doing that, but I've let him have my neck, and all of a sudden he cinches up and tightens, and I think he's not happy. Dan's like, oh no, he's fine. He just snap rock. Click, click, click. All right. Puts the phone down, comes over and grabs it, and this is real. So
my God.
he pulls, we kind of step into the next room, which is, we had taken the snake out of the tight room where the reptiles were into the more space. So we step back into the reptile room to get him off me. But I'm starting to see stars at this point. Like, I'm like, but he gets him off me. And next thing you know, he just wraps my buddy Dan's hand. I mean, it's just this 9-foot Afrock just wraps his hand, and his hand's just purple at this point. So I'm like, whew, now we're trying to get this thing in the cage. So finally we get it in the cage and we close the doors, and thank God this is when he decided to do this. Then he starts trying to hit his bite. He's just slamming the glass. Thank God it wasn't doing that during this whole time, because that would have been fucking miserable. But
wow.
So, typical guys to go to the next room and where Brian was watching TV with my buddy's girlfriend, and they're laughing, and we go in there and we're like, we sit down, they're laughing at whatever's on the TV, and we're like, well, Rambo tried to kill me, and they laugh, and Dan's like, no, Rambo tried to kill this motherfucker. Like, he made an attempt. And that was the day I learned that you just don't trust big snakes. And you have to realize that these things are big predators. Even the friendliest retic or berm in a moment, they're just so strong, man. But
yeah.
So for the next, still to this day, I still get random pictures. Remember this? Or, he actually sold Rambo. The funny thing is Rambo was a female and ended up having Partho babies twice, I believe. Yeah. But yeah, over the years, I get pictures randomly from him or Brian. Hey, remember Rambo? Yeah, fuck you. But that was
how big around was this animal?
He's I'm trying to remember. He was probably like that.
Yeah.
I mean, a decent 8-9 foot. Not a monster, but not small, big enough. And like I said, it was my fault. I should know better to let a snake like that do that. But it was all in that motion of like understanding it's an Afrock and trying to let it do what it needs to do to not piss it off. And then to this day, I don't know what set it off. It was literally fine, really, for the whole time until it was there. It just went, and it was just tighter and tighter. And like I said, I'll send you the picture in private, the last one where you can see it in my eyes, where I'm like,
Oh God.
And then there's a picture of Dan with it around his hand, and you can see how purple his hand is. So I'll send you those pictures. Jeez. You'll get a kick out of them. But
yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So I mean, I just saw going to see Dr. Tillis. I saw he brought out a retic, a berm, and an Afrock. And yeah, like you can see the difference between those three. The retic was very active, very holding on. The berm was just a noodle, just totally relaxed, laid back.
Berms are just a big teddy bear. Usually when they're like that, they're just whatever.
Yeah, and this animal actually came from the Everglades. I think it's like one of the only berms that has been taken from the Everglades, and lived to tell the tale.
Yeah.
And then he brought out the Afrock, and man, that thing was. It reminded me of like one of my Timors trying to wiggle out of my hands, except it's this 8 or 9 foot, maybe 10 foot snake that's just all this energy coming out, and it's just flailing around and trying to get away from him. And he's holding him, and he's like, he'll calm down in about 30, 45 seconds. He's totally calm. Dr. Tillis is totally calm, and he's like, yeah, he'll calm down. And, the snake's thrashing around, and then all of a sudden he just mellowed out and then was kind of just curious about what was going on. But yeah, it was pretty intense. It was an intense animal for sure.
Well, they said they made jokes after that because he had done a similar thing to my buddy's nephew or something that was also a ginger. So there was jokes about the snake hitting gingers. And then like a week later, actually, they had that snake out with a friend of ours that was up at Dan's house, and it bit the shit out of him, man. It just gnawed on his hand, blood everywhere. So like, yeah, after that, it was like, all right, no one's holding this anymore. This has become an issue. So
wow. And he's an educator?
Used to be. Yeah, used to be. I don't think he's not doing it anymore.
So in New York, is that so you can have certain species if you're an educator? Yeah,
the one permit that allowed them to do that. I think there was a dangerous animal permit that would allow you to have like venomous. But the permit that allowed, at least then, the way it worked was to work with the Retex or Berms or Big Monitor was you basically had to be an educator. And the stipulation was you had to do at least one, I think, educational presentation a year or something like that, to be able to keep that. It was basically an educational, I forget how it was worded. It's been a while since I've looked at all that.
Yeah.
But that's the tax of it was, you basically had to be an educator and do at least one or two shows during the year to be able to have that permit, to keep that permit.
Yeah. So what do you think, what do you think is a solution to make the hobby better for everybody, for breeders, keepers, pet owners?
I wish I had that solution. I wish any of us had a solution.
I mean, if you had power to be able to do something to make it easier for keepers, but also better for wildlife management, especially like in places like Florida where escaped pets are, a concern. Do you think, I mean, in Texas, you need to have, I think there's like a permit or something, right? Isn't there?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
I think that they have some sort of a database, or it's tracked somehow, like what animals you have and how many you have of them. So it's not totally the Wild West. It's more like they're giving you the freedom, but I mean, who knows how well regulated it is too, There's
that. I mean, it's a million things. Do you want to do that with breeders? Do you want to do that with every pet owner? Like, there's a lot of ways that could go and a lot of different ways to cut this all, but
yeah, I feel like the pet owners are, those are the ones that can get an animal, realize they've made a mistake or they can't take care of it. And then nobody wants that animal. And, that's where you get to the animals that are set loose.
Oh, certainly. I had this conversation recently with a couple people. I had to come to that realization because I've said multiple times that pet owners are one of the keys to us figuring this out, because the pet owners is a much larger number than breeders. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much money we pump into USARK, it's not going to be enough. So if we could get the pet owners in the group chat with us, and to me that equals votes. That equals what actually matters to politicians, which is numbers. Enough people changes the game. More so than money. Even money buys that, but it's more so than money is what they really count about, is the amount of votes that they may have to go with or go against. And I said that with pet owners, and then I was reminded that a lot of times the pet owners are the ones who are causing things that we have to fight, because sometimes the pet owners, like you said, is that. So
yeah,
I think it's a combination of things. Maybe better educating the pet owner. I don't know. I wish I had an easy answer for that. Unfortunately, it's such a nuanced and large, messy thing now.
Yeah,
I just don't know what the secret is. I mean, it's just having more compassion for people, trying to create a better community, trying to get more people involved from the pet side. The good pet owners. There's a lot of great pet owners, so they're not all trash. And the same with breeders. There's great breeders and there's trash. I mean, how do we police ourselves while also bringing together the good of all? I don't know, because every time we try to police ourselves, nothing really actually happens. Nothing changes. So
yeah. It seems like that's where
we should have policed ourselves here in New York, but that recently nobody really. I mean, to be fair, in the group with those people, they censor it, but I feel like the hobby had a moment and it went away, and now nobody's talking about it except a couple of us. So
Yeah. And that's like the big thing, right? Is that breeders like that present themselves that way at shows, they give breeders a bad name. And then the pet owners talk trash about the breeders. And then the breeders can talk trash about the pet owners, and it's like this back and forth that doesn't help anything. It doesn't help the hobby.
no, I mean,
go
sure,
in any.
yeah, there is that, and that's why it's such a messy, almost impossible thing to fix, because there is so much. It's so nuanced and so complicated, and so many angles to come at it from with that. And I mean, what do you do? There's not much you can do except be responsible. Try to influence people to be responsible and compassionate. And the rest is out of our hands, unfortunately. I mean, it's the collective is the collective. I mean, I'm not saying we can't fight. We shouldn't fight for our ability to keep these animals, but at the same time, like, it's tough, because at the end of the day, we could do everything right, and stroke of a pen, it's just going to change.
Yeah. And it's alarming how powerless you feel when those things are happening.
Oh, you ain't lying. It is.
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, what?
And there's a lot of states these days that are seeing that with just the wrong publicized incident, and all of a sudden laws pop up, and you can stop them if you get enough people to go to the public comment stuff.
Yeah.
But it's tough. I've been on the phone for some of the Florida public comments with stuff, and you're against the 8 ball, because I remember one particular comment thing at work. I was at work and I was on the listening, and the public comment thing, it started with 3 corrupt people and their opinions. 3 of the people that are backed by realtors and that. So right off the bat, and it was supposed to be random. It's not random when you're getting 3 of your people, to start off. And then, you had a couple educated talkers. You had general public that hates the snakes. There was some of them. And then there was a few less elegant, I don't know, pet keepers that they went too far with. Sometimes it's like, this is my baby, I need this for my life. Like, I hear you, like, but we got to argue this with facts and common sense. We can't argue based on emotion here, and it doesn't make us look good. And that's what you had on there. You had Phil from USARK. You had a few other the very elegant talkers. You had John Q. Public, sounds terrible because they hate the snake, and that's what really ends at the end of the day. And that's why I told people in the blog I just wrote, really need to take stock in that, of minding our P's and Q's with public comments on threads, especially with viral snake videos or anything, because it's not the person that you're arguing with that's even the problem. It's the people that see how you act or how you talk to that person. It's the 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 people that see your comments. So if you're a piece of shit and you insult them and disrespect them, I get it. Even in the face of them being disrespectful to you, you should still try to keep your cool in a public forum. But,
yeah, for sure.
Because I've seen it. I've watched these viral videos, and I've read the comments, and you see it. You see the people that are defending the snake side, but a lot of them just go savage on John Q. Public, who doesn't know better and has an opinion. And if you're not, and I've had it. I've had people I've debated like that, John Q. Public, especially locally. Sometimes you have to read the room, and they're just not going to understand. All I ask people is to respect the snake. You don't have to want them. You don't have to like them. Just understand and respect their place in ecosystem, because we get that here with timbers and copperheads. So I have that conversation a lot with them, and I have to understand that I represent certain interests here in this not only for the hobby but for the animals here. So when I try to converse with people like that, sometimes there's that one where it doesn't matter what you say, kill all snakes, that this, that. You can try to help them, but usually I can reach 10 people that didn't even comment, but they see what I'm saying and they see how I'm acting, and they're like, you know what? You're right. I'm not going to kill the snake the next time I see it in the yard. I'm going to move it to the woods or try to do the right thing. That's all you can do. And the same thing with the hobby. It's the same thing with the hobby. You just have to try to not, insult the general public as much as you can, even at the worst. And there's a lot of the worst. I see it. We have to be better representation of the hobby ourselves, so that the people that don't comment and are not involved in your conversation see that.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, like, if they could put a view counter on comments, if you could see how many people saw your comment, if it would change the way that people comment.
It probably wouldn't. I don't think it would. Honestly, I don't think it would.
Yeah. I mean, I think it would probably be shocking, though. Maybe some people would conduct themselves differently if they knew that, oh, man,
Well, especially if you're on a big, long, viral snake video on like a news Facebook page that they shared it and there's thousands of people seeing it. Mm-hmm. That's where it hits, especially in Florida. Like if you go and that's probably where a lot of the people do it. They probably, there's plenty of people that will go on and comment on every person about what the snakes are doing to the environment. They're going to comment to all of them about how feral cats are worse.
Yeah.
You're not going to win very many hearts with that. You're just not, but try to be respectful about it. And remember that one person that you're going to comment, they're just going to defend themselves. They're going to fight you. But maybe 30 people that see it hear what you're saying. And don't just focus on the feral cats. Try to focus on the habitat destruction or other positive aspects.
Yeah. Yeah, it's and the pythons have been very much politicized and brought to the forefront of the argument in Florida, so it's like they don't, there's no doubt that the pythons are doing a bunch of damage, right? But it's just part of the equation. It's just one of the numbers.
Well, and that's what I said years ago. I said, stop pointing the finger over at the cats. Acknowledge it's an issue.
Yeah.
Offered to help the issue. So and that's happened in some places. Some of the guys who know, whether it's a biologist, whether it's whoever, offer to help with solutions, which only helps. Honestly, the reason that never became a thing was because, again, you're fighting against the FWC, who doesn't want the solutions. This is the boogeyman they want while they're over here destroying the habitat, so it's a perfect storm for them. But yeah, just don't, I told them years ago, stop pointing the finger off the bat. Say, hey, I acknowledge these things are one of the issues that need to be fixed. I don't think it's all the pet owner's problem. Some were abandoned. The whole thing, if these berms all came from a destroyed facility, that goes out the window when you realize how many, there's monitors, tegus, like chameleons, like, everything's down there. Like some shit was let go. I mean, yeah. Let's admit it. There's at least one or two people down there that were big suppliers that were letting shit go to breed because they wanted to collect.
Yeah.
That's one of those things we don't talk about. Whoopsie. Sure. It's true. This happened. Like they were letting things go to breed invasives. If we don't acknowledge this, then we can't really begin to correct it.
Yeah, and I think Ron St. Pierre told me that some of the importers would take trash animals that look like they were on death's door and just throw them out into the woods.
Yeah, of course.
And you got to figure some of them would get thrown out, and it'd be a rainy day. They get rehydrated. They grab a lizard, and all of a sudden they're not feeling so bad anymore. They get the UV.
Yeah. Absolutely, 100%. And but again, it's hard to battle that when you're already battling against the 8-ball with the corruption of the FWC and the fact that developers are the ones who are pushing all this. They want the boogeyman. They have the boogeyman. We're doing a bad job of being like, this isn't the boogeyman, y'all. It's like a wish.com boogeyman. Like it's a boogeyman, but like,
yeah,
there's other issues that we really need to address. And, having the fox in the chicken coop protecting it is the biggest one. And even at the national, like I said, EPA and the FWC or the federal fishing game, it's the same thing. How can we protect our natural resources if we're putting corporate industry polluters, etc., in charge of the very systems we put in place to limit them from harming us.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, it's. I hope the day's never there that we can't go to the Everglades and enjoy it for what it is now. I know it's not what it was once, but
Yeah, it's interesting. There's having this trip plan to go to the Everglades and go herping. There's part of me that wants to see a Burmese python, and then there's the other part of me. There's the other part of me that wants to be able to come back and say I was out there for 2 nights straight, with a guy that has analyzed a bunch of data of where to find these things, and we couldn't find any. And this should be the peak season too for them being out and being active.
Nah, if we discussed it a little bit, you'll probably find them because you guys did your homework. I mean, if you just go and if you're just herping Main Park Road, you might not. I mean, if you're not trying too hard, you might. They cross the road and stuff. They're there. I mean, but I've probably got a dozen trips through the glades, with a lot of man hours searching for stuff, and I've never seen one, luckily or unlucky. You always want to see it because you're like, oh, it's. You don't want to see it, but you're like, since it's there, you're like, since it's there, I might as well see it. But
yeah,
I haven't seen one yet. No.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Florida python now. They're never going to go anywhere.
No, yeah. I think that's it's kind of like red ear sliders in New York. Now we're just counting it as a native. Not really, but yeah. I mean, if you look on the list, I mean, sliders, Italian wall lizards, and something else are basically.
Italian wall lizards.
Yeah.
I've never heard of them.
I think that's what they're called. They're a little green, or what color are they? They're a little lizard. And mostly down in the city, Long Island area, I think, actually, where we talked about.
Oh, really?
I think, like, city area. Yeah, they're not here. I've never seen them here. They're not this far up. I don't think they're even as far up as Westchester County. But, yeah, they're down the city. They're invasive. Came over, I believe, on boats back in the day. We're able to create I believe that was a story on boats, or either that or in fruit shipments or something weird like that. But yeah, create a population. We have red ear sliders here. I mean, my dad has a pond, or had a pond in his backyard, and there's 2 or 3 times where I've seen massive female red ear sliders come up to his backyard and hop in the pond for a little bit.
Wow.
Yeah, they're invasive, but it's like
they're established.
Now it's like they're here. Like, it's just, what do you do? It's just not really a program that is there. It's to eradicate them if you even could. And it's the same with berms. I mean, if you haven't been to the Everglades yet, look off the road and just see how thick and gnarly it can be. And swamp is, swamp and wetlands and all that for as far as the eye can see. So what do you do? I mean, you're never going to eradicate the ones in the most unapproachable for a human. You know, way out there in the wilderness.
I had Rachel Pickstein on, and she said that the tegu population is in the hundreds of thousands. Like, it's never going to go anywhere.
Yeah,
there's hundreds of thousands. Like, I can't remember if she said 200,000 or 500,000 tegus out there, and their trapper is getting, I think, like 800 or 1,000 a year.
Oh, wow. Jeez. Yeah. I mean, what do you do? How do you
what are you even doing?
I mean, you do what you can. I mean, that's all you can do is you take the ones you can get out. And I mean, it's a problem. Tegus are another one, because they go up into the Carolinas and stuff. So it's a problem. But
yeah,
what do you do? You can't eradicate them.
You can't eradicate them.
You can't. You're never gonna get each one.
Yeah,
you just slow it down the best you can. And
exactly.
Again, I mean, you got to stop habitat destruction anyway. I mean, to even begin to help, and just at the same time do what you can. Feral cats, every invasive. I mean, it's all the puzzle pieces you got to figure out. It's not just one simple thing. You can't. All right, get rid of all the berms. You still have the other problems. They're not going away. So
And that's what's funny too, is we treat the animal like it was their choice and their fault that they came here and established themselves, you know? Like we
Yeah.
look at it like we demonize the animal, but the animal had no, you know, it was not a choice for the animal to end up here.
No, of course it wasn't, but it's humans' fault at the end of the day.
Yeah.
No matter how we look
I
at
mean,
it, it comes back to be on the humans.
yeah. I mean, taking my kid fishing, we catch a ton of Mayan cichlids, you know, all sorts of invasive fish
Yeah.
out of the freshwater.
Yeah.
And we have the lionfish in the saltwater, you know, so it's like, yeah, it is what it is. You know, you're never going to get all the Mayan cichlids.
No, you never get all the lionfish either because they're everywhere.
No.
Oof, those things are fucking everywhere. So yeah, no, it's you just do what you can if you're working on that problem. You just do the best you can to make the most impact you can, and that's all any of us can do at the end of the day.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, I'm kind of sad now.
Don't be sad. There's hope. There's always hope. You know, as much as it's problems that we have to address, but there's also a lot of good in the world too. There's a lot of exciting stuff still. A lot of animals out there to see. A lot of exciting moments to have.
Yeah. Do you plan on getting out to Australia and herping there to see some jungles in the jungle?
Someday. It's not very high on the list. It dropped. It used to be high on the list, but now it's been a lot of other places and a lot of other things. So it's still there. Yeah, at some point I'll get down there.
Yeah.
I got at least one friend down there, a good friend of mine, um, that that scuba dives also and stuff, and we talk a lot. So if we go down there, we'll probably go herping with him and scuba dive with him a little bit. But one day, I don't know when. It's not in line anytime soon at the moment.
What did you find anything cool when you were herping in Costa Rica?
Eyelash vipers are easy.
That's awesome.
What else? Like a one of the blunt-headed like slug-eating snakes.
Oh wow.
A hognose viper. That was cool. Little baby too. And then the dude put it on a leaf and then put the leaf on my hand with I'm like, this is going against everything. But fuck it, we're here. Let's do it your style. Like it was cool. But and then a centipede eating snake that looked kind of like a coral snake, which was cool. And then after all that, we went back to the eco zoo that the gentleman owned at the time, and he had two large bushmasters that were in the zoo that he had captured like 12 years before, and it was late. And I was like, he's like, oh, we'll take the bushmasters out. I'm like, it's late. We're drinking. Like, I gotta get up early the next morning and leave. And next thing you know, he wouldn't take no for an answer, and he pulled his two big bushmasters out and played with those things.
Jeez.
Which are an impressive animal, and they were very calm, very very calm. But that was cool. But yeah, it was the dry season when we were there, and it was like we saw like 7 snakes, and they're like, oh, sorry, it's slow night. I'm like, dude, I'm from New York where you can go out and not see anything. So like, this was a good night. 7 snakes in like 2 hours or 3 hours. Like, I'll take it.
Yeah, so, hell yeah.
And there was other stuff too. Like I said, we didn't see him, but there's fertile ants there, and you know the guy's son that spoke English told me about going up with his girlfriend, and I think it was his girlfriend had stepped on like a cow's footprint, and he saw it too soon, and she stepped, bridging the cow's footprint, and there was a baby, like a small fertile ant laying there, and she stepped, not on it, but over it, and like he's like, hold on, and like probably pulled her off quick. I forget exactly what they did, but and then I asked, I was like, is there jaguars here? And he's like, oh yeah, like we don't see them. They're not very many, but they had a camera trap set up for their university to do a study, and he's like, we only had like 8 triggers in 2 months. I'm like, bro, like, that's pretty good. I put camera traps up for deer, and I've got less than that. So okay, we're being watched by a jaguar. That's cool. So
wow,
yeah, Costa Rica is a cool spot. It's a very nice place.
Nice. Yeah, it's something I want to start doing more herping. I'm excited to go out to the Everglades and see what that's all about, and then start maybe doing that like every quarter or something, every 6 months, get out there and go herping.
Typically, it's a weird spot. I've had great nights there, and I've had nights where I'm like, fuck, it's just a lot of driving for no reward. But usually cold nights. But no, I've had some good nights there. I mean, I've had nights where I've gotten sick of seeing cottonmouths after the 10th one. But I saw my first Eastern diamondback there. So
nice.
The Crocs,
I still haven't seen one alive.
Cool. Down to Flamingo. Go down to Flamingo. Hopefully the Crocs are around. Those are always fun to see.
Nice. Right on, man. Well, thank you, Scott. I appreciate you coming on, and
I appreciate the offer to come on and chat with you.
Hell yeah, man. It was good talking.
Absolutely.